talked about affirmative prayer the other day, what was underneath the recipe of affirmative prayer was seed, soil, plant. The seed is the seed of God's designs for you, God's highest designs for you. The soil is your consciousness, and the plant is the outpicturing of those two together. Okay, so that's the mathematics that we're going to go into, but we're going to use the gardening scenario because everybody has gardened. Amen. So today, in regards to the idea of planting, what we're really paying attention to is the fact that we are rising up. That we're going to rise with the prize, and that's what happens in the garden. So today we're talking about rising up, rising from the ashes like phoenixes, rising like the sun, S-O-N and S-U-N, rising away from moving away from the tomb and really allowing that light to come to us and through us, and rising to our optimal potential. So who is ready to rise? Thank you. Yeah, it's time. So the way that we rise is that we care for our garden, our consciousness. Our consciousness is our garden. And the good news about caring for our gardens is that care is our currency here, as we just said. So we should be the people who know the value of caring for things. And when we say care is our currency, if that doesn't make sense to you, what we're trying to say is that currency is like the money that we use here. Like we hug each other, and we look out for each other, and we raise each other up. And so that's the way that we spend our energy. That's the most important energy, is to care for each other, right? And then currency is like money, so we say show me the money, show me that you care. Like show your life that you care. Like that would be such a great thing to do to your life, is to show your life that you care for it. And then in regards to care as our currency is also the fluidity, like a current in the river. Like that's the way that we actually do things. We do things with care. And it's startling when people don't do things with care. It really can be like agitating to our souls. Any place where we feel uncared for. When we showed up today, our podium, probably what happened was some kids used it as a skateboard, and God bless them, because I know I've done that in my life. It was like, what? It rolls, let's get on it. So it wasn't cared for, and it feels like, And that's what happens when people feel uncared for. They stop showing up, or they just don't feel like they're invested in their optimal good because nobody's cared for them. This is what we see when people are hurt or harmed or attack other people. They just haven't been effectively cared for. So that's our job, to care for, but we can't give what we don't have, so we have to care for ourselves first, put our oxygen mask on first. And in regards to caring for our community is also sharing, as I mentioned in the prayer. Like we want to take this good that we have and we want to extend it, because that's another way of caring. So a person who is cared for is compelled to do good work in the world. A person who really feels cared for is compelled to do good work. So we don't come here to just feel good. We come here in the hopes to do good. To demonstrate that we've been cared for by expressing that out into our world. And caring, when we think about how you care for something, like a baby. Think about, she's going to care for her baby right now. And that baby's like, I need some care. It's screaming, like the world is screaming to us, I need some care. And instead of saying, I don't got time, we go to the baby, we lift the baby up. And we hold the baby, and we nurse the baby, and we love the baby. And we come to the baby like we come to our consciousness, and we say to the baby, oh my God, I love baby, I love you so much, you're so cute, look at you, we love you, baby. But instead, a lot of us come to our consciousness like, hey, what's up? I guess I should be working with you, but it's awkward. So let's do it later, eh? Rain check, But imagine if we came to our consciousness like, oh my God, this is my soil. This is my consciousness. I need to be with this. I need to understand what are the rocks in my consciousness, what are the blocks in my consciousness. I need to care for my consciousness, because my consciousness is the thing that's going to birth forth my good. It's the first relationship. We should care for it as preciously as we care for a little child. So, and then look what happens when we care for our child. So the opposite of caring for our child is when we don't care for something, or even when we do the opposite, when we hold people down, or we run people down, or we negate people's feelings, or even horrifically, when we discourage people. To discourage someone means to literally rip their courage out. And now more than ever, we need courage and strength and wisdom to navigate. So we don't want to be the discouragers. We want to be the encouragers. In fact, you've had this done to you. You have been discouraged in some way or another. And that's the thing that crushed your soul, man. And if you can take that experience and say, this no more, not on my watch, not under my nose. I will not be a discourager. I will be an encourager unless someone's standing on the bridge, and then I might say, hey, what do you think about that? That's the only time that you might want to think about not encouraging. But in almost 9 times out of 10, encouragement is such a good thing to add to the world. And when we look at somebody who has discouraged us, what we can say about that is like, that person was just spiritually immature. That's all that was happening there. That person was working with a really spiritually immature background. And so that's as good as it got. It's not to blame them. But from your perspective at this point, you could say, you know what? I'm spiritually mature. You know, when I was a kid, I talked like a kid. I did like a kid. I had a kid's consciousness. But I'm a man today. That's from the Bible. I'm a woman today. I'm responsible for the outpicturing of my consciousness. And I'm not going to give myself the excuse to get off the hook. You know, I'm not going to fall back on, I was confused, I didn't know, I'm helpless. That's a child. That child is not going to rise with the prize. That childless consciousness is not going to rise with the prize. So we have to be willing to eliminate all of those places where we give ourselves an excuse. Because you guys have so much, we have so much potential. You know, it'd be a crime if we left this earth with all of the potential that lives in our bones. Like, not here and not on my watch, at least. And I hope that's the truth for you, for everyone else that sits in the circle, that we get each other's backs. That we recognize, hey, you're playing small here. It's time to rise. Like, your time is coming. Now is the time. So, spring. So spring, you know, now's the time. Spring. Spring forward. Spring in love. Spring in joy. Spring in happiness. Put some skin in the game. Show up like you're in love. You know, show up like spring shows us to show up in love. So spring into action. Spring, when we think about spring, it's the beautiful thing about it is that it doesn't attack. It doesn't get. Spring comes from a place of overflow. It comes from the underwater water that fills up from the melted snow in the winter, and it fills up, and then it just flows over because it's the only natural direction for it to go. And it doesn't withhold, and it doesn't calculate, and it doesn't say, oh, is this gonna work out? It doesn't hesitate. It just bubbles up like your own laughter, like your own love, like those things that you're designed for. You're designed to have this energy flow through you in an unlimited way. We don't always allow ourselves to experience that because we've got sometimes into too much adulting. Like, oh, you know, I can't be the most enthusiastic person at the party. Why not? Your enthusiasm predicts your outcome. Enthusiasm means filled with spirit. These times and this time, you know, we need to be the ones to bring, you know, the happy and the most optimal idea to those who have, you know, who are given more. More is going to be expected, and you won't know you have it until you share it. So you want to get in harmony with spirit. You want to get in harmony with spring. You want to recognize the spring within yourself. I like to think that spring is like this God painting, you know, that God is painting this beautiful picture for us and using all of its colors and just laying itself out lavishly in shades of green and gold. And I mean, it's just so beautiful to take the time and appreciate this time of year and to prepare for this time of year. And so when we're talking about consciousness, well, what happens in nature is not what happens in consciousness, because nature and like a ground of a garden, it doesn't really have a choice. If you put a seed into it, the soil says yes to it. So whatever falls on that ground, whether it be sunflowers or weeds, the beautiful soil just says yes. It doesn't have freedom of choice. But God gave us freedom of choice. It's a beautiful thing that we've been given freedom of choice. It's amazing, and it's a way that God says, I trust you. You know, we were in the Garden of Eden where everything was good and beautiful and holy, and we had no other option. And the God was like, I'm going to give you an option to choose against this. But this is so great. And we're like, yeah, this is so great. It's like, so you're not going to choose against it, right? We're like, no. Why would we do that? Okay, great. So I'm going to trust you with freedom of choice. And as soon as we got freedom of choice, we're like, this place is kind of cold. I don't know, I'm naked. I don't know, maybe that's weird. Is God weird or something? So, I mean, then we went into all this judgment, you know, on our situation. And God's like, I didn't ask your opinion. I didn't ask your opinion. I asked you to rejoice and be glad. Like, when did we jump script? When did you take the script back? And so we get to choose again. We get to choose again, and we get to choose that everything is working out for us, that God is good, that we are cared for. So the difference between us and the soil is that we have choice. So when something comes to us, we have every right to say yes or no. And if it's not in alignment with our highest good, we get to say not today. I'm really impeccable about what I'm willing to grow in my consciousness. And we get to look at our consciousness and to see where we've created any blocks or any unforgivenesses or any old ideas, and we get to actually look at that so that we can lift up those rocks and blocks and move them out of our consciousness so that we can have a more fertile soil. Then we can set the intentions, and the intentions, like I said, are the seeds. And the thing about intentions, and we've had this conversation before, is like, don't manifest intention, but you can manifest intending. Like tending to your garden. And like a good gardener, she tends to her garden, meaning cares for. So it's the difference between the second kingdom of consciousness was like, I'm going to make this happen! And I'm going to take the time to do the right things that are going to cause growth in this area of my life. It's the difference between like a really high-end diet pill and like going for a walk every day. You know what I mean? It's like we want to microwave everything. We want to microwave all the good stuff out of our lives. So I'm going to invite you to be more like a good gardener who's going to tend gently to the garden and expect growth, but organic growth. The way that we clear out some of those blocks are through meditation. We're not going to get away from that. Like, that's the word meditation. You know what I mean? And for me, meditation is also about integration. It's like we get to listen to, and you know as well as I know, because there's a lot of great meditators here, is that when you meditate, it cuts out so much time. It cuts out so much rubbish. It cuts out so many so many cul-de-sacs. Like, we get solutions in our meditations with God that we're like, oh, I'm so glad. Nobody ever came out of meditation and said, well, that was a waste of time. Never. It's never happens. So I'm going to invite us as a community to go into a 21-day challenge in regards to our consciousness. To really move into accountability around our seed and soil and plant. And to find somebody here today and say, this is a seed I'm really ready to plant this seed in my consciousness. I really want to see a demonstration in 21 days. When you do that in community, when two or more are gathered, forget about it. You could even look around your entire life. Like, I'd suggest one thing, but look around your entire life and say, in my relationship, I would like more romance. In my home, I would like more order. In my physicality, I would like to care for myself better. Like, do not shortchange yourself if we're going on this ride together for 21 days. 21 days is how I started A Course in Miracles online, and I thought I was just going for 21 days. I haven't stopped yet. It's been 5 years, so be careful. I'm going to seatbelt it into something, but it'll be seatbelted into something good. So in moving past with the meditation, you're going to get to see the blocks that you are no longer interested in investing in. And sometimes when you begin to move those blocks, there might be emotions and there might be tears. And those tears can sometimes be used to loosen that old idea, and that's okay. Like, don't think that this is going to be without a little bit of emotion, because when the snow melts, we've had this experience here, people throw all kinds of junk in the snow and they think it's gone, and then the snow melts and it's like, oh my God, it's like a junkyard, right? Like, that's our consciousness. When we go unconscious to our consciousness, we can just attract like all this kind of junk, and then we turn the light on in our closets and we're like, what happened? So when you start to turn the light on of your consciousness, it might look really crazy at first. Do not get afraid. This is just what it looks like, okay? Like a good gardener, you want to look at what is your kryptonite. There are things in your life right now that are your kryptonite. Some of us have dealt with our kryptonite, but there's always still little subtle places where that could show up. It could show up in addictions to TV or overeating or spending or, just not taking care of yourself in a million different ways, overspending, these slippery places that we go to when we're unconscious and we just think, oh, I'll figure it out tomorrow. But again, if we went to our consciousness, like, baby, this is a baby. Like, I want to care for it. Like, I'm not going to pour alcohol and shove it in front of the TV. Doesn't work. I've tried that with the first one. Bad choice. Bad mommy. Can you imagine? Anyhow. Yeah, but the truth is, treat your consciousness the same way you would treat your beloved child. And so what is your kryptonite? You know it right now. You probably already thought about it. It might be that friend who's just always a Debbie Downer. It's not your job, okay? It's time for you to say lightly and politely, I'll see you in 21 days. I got some mileage to make on my consciousness right now. I'm in intensive care with my consciousness. I'm in extra grace required with my consciousness, and I'm doing this for me, because when this spring is over, I'm going to be so bountiful by fall, I won't even recognize myself. Can I get an amen? Amen. I'm sure you're still awake there. All right. So, as we're moving forward in this way, when you get to this place of planting your intentions into the soil, the next thing that you're going to need is patience. Patience is the virtue of kings. You know, patience, you're going to keep thinking, you're going to go back to it and go, it still looks the same. You know, it still looks the same. But you just have to continue to move on faith like a kid on Christmas Eve. You know, you have to cultivate that joyful expectancy. There's a book, Road Less Traveled. And in the book he says, if we hold off on instant gratification, that was his idea in the book, hold off on the instant gratification just for 21 days, or even just for like an hour. Like just see if you can work with yourself an hour at a time. You'll begin to cultivate joyful expectancy and anticipation. You know, remember anticipation? Remember when we had that? Before we got all into like instant gratification and I can't believe it's not here already? Like, remember when we romanced anticipation when hunger was like a good sauce for food? And your mom was like, wait till you're hungry. So we're gonna, as good gardeners, we're going to romance anticipation. We want to remember, when was the last time we had a burning anticipation? That's what you want to stick your seed into, is that burning anticipation. You want to hold it in that kind of energy, like, oh, this is going to happen, and I'm not responsible for it. I'm only responsible for holding the consciousness that knows that with God all things are possible. When Sally was talking about her job, that's exactly what she used. You know what I was saying? Like, you should have a job that, you know, celebrates you financially and creatively. Like, maybe that was a new thought for her, but as soon as she thought it, it hit her in the gut, and she said, that's for me. Now, the only thing we have to hold on to with that's for me is to be consistent with it. Because we'll be walking down the street with like, yeah, that's for me, and they'll be like, oh, donuts. You know what I mean? We get off track very quickly, and we just have to be like, no, just draw back just for now. It's not going to feel fun. You know, this is sort of like a spiritual boot camp. It's not going to feel great, you know, but again, like in the beginning when I was saying, like, we don't come here to feel good, we come here to do good. You know, and somebody who's living at the peak of their possibility is able to do so much good in the world. You know those people, you've seen them, they're your lighthouses. They're people you go, well, how come that always works out for Oprah? Everybody wants to be Oprah. Nobody wants to do the exercise of staying focused on the goal. I wanted to read this quote to you, and I don't remember where it's from, but it's from Alan Jones. It says, one of our problems is that very few of us have developed any distinctive personal life. Everything about us seems secondhand. No, not us here, but this is the general public. If this is true for you in any area, though, you might want to look at it. Everything about us seems a little secondhand, even our emotions. And I just want to speak to that. I remember one time when a good friend of mine died, and suddenly, and somebody gave me the news, and I was sitting outside of this film that we were making, and I was outside the shoot, and I sat down on the curb, and I never dealt with a sudden death like that, and I fell to the ground on the stoop, and I just saw myself break open and wailing, and I literally had an out-of-body experience where I looked at myself, and I was like, that's how they do it on TV. You know, because that's what I was sold. Like, this is the appropriate action for this emotion. You know, but I was at least aware enough to look at myself and say, wow, I don't seem to have a choice, but I must have a choice because I'm looking at myself.
You're too silly.
It's interesting, right? When we stop to really think about all of the choices that we have and all of the ways we just keep moving forward with unquestioned territory. So, you know, this is about questioning your territory. So this is what Alan Jones is saying. Everything about us seems secondhand, even our emotions. In many cases, we have relied on secondhand information in order to function. We accept the words of the physician, the scientist, the farmer on trust. I do not like to do this. I have to because they possess vital knowledge of living in which I'm ignorant. Secondhand information concerning the state of my kidneys, the effect of my cholesterol, and the raising of chickens, I can live with that. So we can live with having experts in certain fields, but where we cannot live is having authorities in regards to our spirituality. And he says, when it comes to questions of meaning and purpose and death, secondhand information will not do. You got to go to your God. You got to get intimate with your higher power. You got to come naked to your conversations with your God and say, what is this for you and me? How's it going to go down for you and me? You know, I mean, everybody can tell me this or that. I can read a million books, but when are we going to get together, you and I, and have that holy communion? It says, I cannot survive on secondhand faith and a secondhand God. There has to be a personal word, a unique confrontation. Are you ready to have a unique confrontation with your divine? Because if you do that, I promise you, you will see miracles. A unique conversation is that conversation that you have in meditation. Is that conversation that begins to open up, that you make a commitment to. When we have begun to take charge of our life, to own our life, there is no longer any need to ask anyone else permission. There is no longer any need to ask permission from anyone else. What would it feel like to live like that? To feel like you have all the permission to do what you need to do, and you lived in a tribe of people that said yes to you and didn't question or discourage, but said, yes, we trust you. If this is true for you, we trust you. Just to go through what we've already gone into is 21 days. We're going to shake it up. We're going to wake it up a little bit. We're going to take special care of ourselves. We're going to figure out what it would look like to really move into self-care. We're going to listen to the intentions of the divine. You could tell your God where to go, what to do, and what to say, but it'd be so much better if you just listen to the intentions of the divine, because they will be so much better than anything you could imagine. So that's what happens in meditation when you get still. You're going to take those intentions and you're going to carry them forward. Like the Blessed Mother, you know, she didn't have the means. And in fact, she had a ton of doubt, and she was like, this can't happen, because, you know, it didn't happen. So I'm not sure how this is going to work out. And the angel was like, don't worry about it. We're going to figure out the details. You just need to say yes. You just need to say yes. You just need to say yes. And then the angel said, it's done unto you. It's done unto you. And then that's what Mary said, let this be done unto me. And then she was able to birth Christ's consciousness into the world. Now that's amazing. And you are capable of that. That was an example of the impeccable things that can happen to an impeccable consciousness. When you care for a consciousness like it's a holy divine gift from God, then you can use that very same consciousness to bring everything into the world that you ever desired, but again, not for your own good, but to have an impact on the world that's a worthy legacy of who you are. You do not want to leave this world with all your stories and songs and all your magic still in you. So Speakeasy is here just to support spiritual well-being and personal growth, okay? And so that's what's happening, and that's the word.